We are recording. All right. Welcome back to SNC Podcast, episode 38. Finally back after like a month break, building out our Kickstarter. We actually have two awesome humans that are running a Kickstarter as well. Introduce yourselves.
All right, well, I'm Matt Knowles. I am one half of Insymmetry Creations. As you said, we have a Kickstarter running right now for Tales from Nocturnia, 3 of 3, and also the 130 plus page trade paperback. I'm sure that throughout the course of this this podcast, we can tell you how a 3-issue miniseries has got over 130 pages in a trade. We also have a steampunk time travel series that we did called Heirs of Isildur. We did 11 issues and then turned it into a 268 page trade. There is a 12-track metal album that goes along with it. We've got a lot of different arms to the different things that we do. But I will pause at that point, and I will let Steph down there introduce herself as well.
Up here.
Yes.
In my screen, you're down here. In my screen, you're down there. So I'll point.
I'm Steph Cannon. I'm the other half of Insymmetry Creations with Matt. We are a content creating duo. We say that we're more than just comic writers because obviously we want to put our hands in as many different areas as possible. Before that, I have a couple of short comics that have been in anthologies, Corpus Anthology, if it came out on a Wednesday. So I have those as well.
That's cool. Sweet. What got you into comics, both of you?
You want to take that one first, Steph, since you're the comic person?
I've always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a kid. I kind of got into comics late, as they say. I didn't read them as a kid, but I still loved Batman and Superman. I started reading them late teens, early 20s, and got to raising kids, got busy, finally had an opportunity a few years ago to start thinking about it again and realizing that I kind of really wanted to write comics. It seemed more of how I was visualizing my stories, and so I taught myself how to write comic scripts, and I wrote a script for a graphic novel, and then I heard about an online competition called Go City Comics, and they had a category for a one-page comic. I thought that would be a really fun venture since I had just finished this big long graphic novel script, and I ended up taking finalist in that competition, and that sort of just opened up some doors for me and was an impetus for Matt and I meeting as well. So it's just been uphill from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I actually came from the metal world. I've been a metal musician my whole life. Toiled in the underground, was in a band that, was signed on a bunch of smaller labels, released like 5 CDs, did one tour in Europe, and after we were done with that tour, toiled around for a little bit, got really tired, really burnt out on the industry. This was when the industry was not really understanding how to transition from, physical media to monetizing MP3s and digital platform and whatnot. And I just got tired of being in the industry and was burnt out, but I always had that itch to continue to write. So I'd always, put little things in a pad or little things on Notepad. And about 7-8 years later, I had a series of events happen that I was like, you know what, I need to get back into writing. And it started as writing another metal album, but I wanted it to be more than that. And so it was a metal album that had a short story attached that turned into a full ebook that turned into an illustrated novel. And then when Steph and I got together, even though I'd already had the 11 issues already mapped out, when we got together, that's when it started to really start to change and become more of a comic-based entity. And then when we went back and did the trade paperback for Heirs of Isildur, we went back and relettered all 268 pages from top to bottom, reformatted a lot of the early issues that were completely in illustrated novel form. So even though I had the framework, when you get that trade paperback book, every single page has got Steph's imprint on there. And she was, she might be small, but she definitely knows how to put the elbow into you to make sure, nope, those word bubbles are crossing, or I'm looking at this page and I'm not sure the direction of how I need to read, so you need to go back and fix it. And it was always for the good of the project. It wasn't just, this is my personal preference. It was, we need to make sure this is better. If we're going to go back and do this and re-letter this whole thing, you need to do it right. And it was a great collaboration to make that project what it was to get it to that end goal.
Awesome. Yeah. We released the Seer Chronicles, the like first issue last year, but before we did the Kickstarter, we released it with like Dylan lettering it. He does not letter. He just used Photoshop. And there was a Chris, I don't know what his last name is, but he messaged me and he's like, "Oh, you need a letterer?" I'm like, I don't have money for that, but should have found a way to pay. And then we got it lettered for the Kickstarter last year, and then it looked way better. Not saying like he's not good at that, but he's not the best at that.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with lettering in Photoshop too. I would do everything that we do in Photoshop. However, there are some limitations. I was actually talking with Luke Stone from the Voodoo Nations Kickstarter last week, and we did a signing event. And you know, he's like, yeah, there's a couple tips and tricks that I can teach you in Photoshop, and I'm always willing to learn. Because what I thought I knew, I did the best I could with the knowledge that I had at the beginning, and then there were some things I would do at the beginning, and Steph was really nice to me about it, and she's like, "Hey, it looks good, but I think you can do a little bit better." And you know, she was very patient with getting to where it needed to be, and then once it got to a certain level, she's like, "Hey, I'm finally glad you can do that thing right now that I've always wanted you to do the whole time." And I'm like, I did the best that I could, so.
I just let somebody else do it.
Yeah. Our letterer is Jerome. I can't say his last name. It's French. Yeah. Travis is like, "Here's a letterer," and I was like, "Awesome!" And now he's my forever letterer.
Yeah, Travis is a good guy, man. Travis is a good guy. We've known Travis for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. Done a lot of events with Travis, done a lot of work with him. Travis, the last time we did a Kickstarter, Travis actually surprised us in the middle of the Kickstarter. He's like, "Hey, I want to have you guys on for a live." And in the middle of his live, he's like, "Yeah, anybody that backs during this Kickstarter, like during this show, I'm going to give you guys a 4-page unreleased story that I have." He just tried to find a way to pop up our backers during the show, and Steph and I are like, "What the freak is going on here, man?" We had no idea. He's like, "Yeah, I wanted to surprise you guys."
Yeah.
Yeah, Travis is a good guy. He's got a really big heart, and he always tries to do the best that he can to help other creators to get lifted up as well. He's been a big influence in that, you know.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to help lift other people up, you can't expect them to lift you up.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, the support we got on like this Kickstarter that we're running right now is like insane. I'm like, oh, like the first day we got like 1,000 something, and I was like, what? How? And then so many people are asking like on Twitter, which I barely use, and they're like, "How did you do that?" And I was like, "Do what?" They're like, "You almost got like 100 backers already," and I was like, "I don't build an audience. It's I don't know." And they're like, "Oh, guess I'll have to do that." I was like, "Yeah."
I think it's a really good time to do a Kickstarter, despite what people might initially think. You know, launching a Kickstarter in the middle of a pandemic, but I think people are hungry for entertainment. They are, but we're all, it's not just they, we're all bored at home. We're all looking for things that can kind of make us escape out of the news and everything else that's going on. So I think people want that. I think that's kind of what's helped elevate some Kickstarters right now.
Yeah, that's why, like, I think March, we turned like, well, our platform is right now is like under construction, but it'll be relaunching soon. But all of the digital comics on there from other people, they're all like free to read now. Like, there was a paywall in a way, like if you wanted to subscribe, you could read like certain ones, but we changed that, and then after that, we're like, oh, all the comics are just gonna be free because we're gonna have like a video game and a bunch of other stuff on there. So.
Video game sounds great, man. I'm definitely looking forward to that. We are, we always are looking to expand what we do. I mean, obviously, you can see we do trading cards, trading card sets, have a metal album. There'll be a metal album. Hopefully, then later on this year, we'll have the sequel album to Heirs of Isildur: The Crossroads Conundrum ready to go. We'll see if that's the case. As you can see from the Kickstarter, we have no problem with putting items in there that don't make any sense in a comic Kickstarter, like, you know, we've got a woodworker that's done, you know, laser etch things like the coasters and the wall plaques and wooden logo stickers. Our leather workers that blew us away with, you know, they did a lot of stuff for us in other campaigns, and they came to us and they're like, "Guys, we really want to raise the game this time, and we've been talking, and we want to do this, and what do you think about this? And it wasn't even like we were almost not even a part of the decision-making process in that until the very end. And they're like, we want to do this crazy Dragon Lord mask, and what do you think of that? And Steph and I were like, what are we going to do with this thing? Who is going to go be like, I need to go get me a gigantic $300, dragon mask to go with my comic. But sure enough, we have, with us having a fan base that is also in the steampunk world, we do a lot of steampunk shows and steampunk festivals and all that. There's a lot of people there that are willing to buy crazy costume items. And, we've sold a few of those things, and we're like, hey, if it helps our Kickstarter to, get to higher levels, we'll do it. I don't care what it is. We'll sell whatever. If it's something that people want, why not put it in the campaign?
Yeah.
Give the people what they want.
Absolutely. And that, honestly, that's something Steph and I talked about before we launched this. We're like, we know what our fan base is. What are the kind of things they're going to want? When we decided the name of this issue was going to be Welcome to the Dragons Lair, we know that, even including myself, I've got dragons all over the place in my house. We know we have some fans in our fan base that are all about dragons. And we're like, if that's what it is, let's make sure that we are really leaning into that on this Kickstarter. Why not? I'm saying, if people want the stuff, great. If they don't, then they don't. But, luckily people have totally wanted it, and it's been a good accessory, all the good accessories to have to the comic itself.
You're killing it. So
we're trying, man. We're trying. A little ways to go. Still got to finish strong, and we'll see what happens here at the end.
Yeah. What, like, one thing you both think it could be different? That, like, there's no right answer. Do you think, like, creators take for granted?
You're talking about period, or talking about when it comes
Period.
to
Like, as a creator, there could be, like, mailing list, something like that.
I have an answer to this. I'll answer first if you want, Steph. I think that, to me, one of the things I think people take for granted is that they can go out and promote exactly how someone else promotes, and they're going to get the same results back. There are going to be some staples to how you promote that are going to be static across the board that everybody needs to do, whether, like you said, whether it be an email list or promoting to previous campaigns and all that. But what we do in our campaign is not going to resonate exactly to how you're going to work in your campaign, and the next person theirs. There may be some things that your specific fan base want that our fans are going to be like, dude, we want nothing to do with that. And I think a lot of times creators don't recognize that. A good example is even when it comes to the way that you post online. If you guys and us were going to go promote today online, and you worded your post a certain way, and I already had that post worded exactly the same way, I would need to go change my post.
Yeah.
Because it's going to make us both look like dorks if we go up there with exactly the same post. People are going to be like, what is this cut and paste nonsense? So, you have to be willing to evolve, and, like Steph and I say, pivot and adjust on a dime, because what worked the last campaign or the first week of your campaign may not work now, and you have to always be willing to evolve and adjust your promotion strategy on a dime.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is you kind of have to, like, earn your post. Like, you have to earn what you're allowed to say with your audience based on whether, like, you're providing a certain type of value or a certain type of conversation, whatever it might be. Like, you can't just post whatever you want. A lot of people kind of just ask for everything, but they don't earn that ability to ask. Where, like, I've had conversations with people where eventually, without asking, they're like, what can I do to help you? Like, that's what you want to happen. Like, you want to be providing something to your audience that is valuable enough to them that they're almost asking you how they can help you before you even think to ask. So that's definitely the way I like to see that.
Well, and kind of like what you said there too, I think one of the things that Steph and I have tried to resist on this campaign is the post that says, hey, we're 2 backers away from 65. Help us get to 65. If there's not a reason to make that number be important, nobody really cares about helping you guys to get to some random number just because you picked it. There needs to be a reason. Like, for instance, when we get to 8,000, 8,000 is just a number, but there's a stretch goal attached to that. It's not going to be insane like the Dragon Lord mask. It's something that's personal to Steph and I. We don't want to release what it is until then. It's something personal to us where we're going to be able to give back to the people that have backed us. And there's a reason why we're trying to get to that level. If we're telling people, hey, there's a reason why we've set this number and it's an important number, I think people gravitate towards that, because you can go onto some of these boards and you'll see like 5 posts in a row. Hey, help us get to 35. Hey, help us get to 65. Hey, help us get to 104. Hey, help us get to 213. And if they don't attach anything to that, it just loses meaning. If you're like, hey, 212 is the highest backer number I've ever had before, so it's going to be personally meaningful to me to get to 213. I think people resonate with that personal thing a lot more than just random numbers and random values out there.
Yeah.
Shouting like a auctioneer trying to sell something.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's why the milestones that I do, this one, it's in 500 segments. So it's like 500 and like we smash through that. And then 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 is the one that we're trying to get to right now. And then 2,500.
I don't even know if we put down the 500 milestone before it broke it.
No. I
That's
was like,
the same thing that happened to us. We were getting ready for one stretch goal and blew past that. We're like, now we got to get ready for the next one.
yeah, I was like, I think I was asleep because I work overnights, and then I woke up. I was like, oh shit, this is like over 500. Okay, I guess gotta.
That's great
gotta
when
put
that
it in.
happens, though.
Yeah, it's awesome. And,
As far as the question goes, I think for me, I think people don't realize how much work you have to put into support fellow creators and interact with them. Because if you're just asking for support all the time but not giving it back, people are eventually going to realize that, and there's a little bit of resentment in that, I think, amongst creators, that, you know, here's this person that wants me to back their campaign, wants me to buy their stuff, wants me to do this and share their posts and all that, but they never do it for not just me but anybody else. And you never know what kind of reach somebody's going to have. You never know what kind of audience they're going to have. And so somebody sharing a post of yours that reaches out to their audience might be different than the audience that we have. And so you have to kind of make friends. You have to at least interact with people online a little bit. And, you know, whether that be Twitter or forums or Facebook groups or at other conventions in your, you know, on Artist Alley with all these other people, get to know people, want to genuinely help them, because they will give it back to you most of the time.
Yeah, one of the things Greg and I talked about early on was the fact that we were willing to share almost anyone else's stuff on our platform, just because we realized that someone might like accidentally find us, but we're not like the comic for them. Like we're not like the absolute thing that they lose their mind over, but we might know somebody who is, and even just being the person who puts on the great show for somebody else can help us, because then, yeah, if they share us and they happen to have a similar audience, like somebody who kind of found them, they kind of enjoy them, but if they saw our stuff, they'd lose their mind. And that's kind of one of the things I notice indie creators, they kind of get like scared about sharing their audience, when in all reality, like if your audience likes your stuff, then they're not going to leave you for somebody else. It's more like you have to know that if you generously share your other people's content, including and hopefully they're sharing yours as well, that you're basically cross-pollinating, trying to find that perfect audience amongst all these small micro audiences that all these small creators got. And it's kind of like a way to hack yourself around the giants like Marvel, DC, Image, you know, IW, all those, like a way to get around those.
I can tell you one of the things, I got an interesting little story about that. Steph and I are going to be doing an in-person signing coming up at a really fun event that we've done previously. The first time that this event was done, I tabled for us on behalf of us right next to Joel Rodriguez from Dust County Chronicles. Joel's a good friend of ours, and we've got very different titles. And one of our goals, myself and Joel, was to see how many people we could get to shovel to the other person. Obviously, we wouldn't be just like forsaking them buying from us to go have them buy from the other person, but how many people we could get almost to add-on sale to the next guy. And I know that that day, Joel's pitch was hilarious. Like he's definitely, he knows how to carnival bark. I'm not a carnival barker. He knows how to be like, hey, you into horror comics? And sometimes people will come over and they'll be like, hey, great. Sometimes he's like, hey, you into horror comics? Nope. Well, what about steampunk? Oh yeah, I like steampunk. Well, you need to go right here. And we both could legitimately say we probably put about $100 in the other person's pocket just from shoveling people back and forth. And you actually feel good about that because you're like, you know what? I was helping out my buddy over here, and Joel and I have both done things, you know, we have done things for each other. We did things for his company. He did things for Steph and I. And you feel good about that because you're like, you know what? I know that that person is leaving with more money in their pocket than they would have if we didn't help them out. And that, it goes a long way. There's some people out there that we've seen that are all give me, give me, give me, you know, come support me, come support me. And I have literally never seen that person put a single post up supporting anybody else. And it makes me very cautious about supporting them because I'm like, this person doesn't get it. This industry is small. You have to be trying to support other people and help raise them up as well. You know, if all you are is gimme, 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 you know, that's just showing you want to just climb the ladder on the tops and the backs of everyone else. You're not trying to help other people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too, you'll notice like if say, you know, a table next to you is like, oh, you don't like my thing, there's their thing. If they end up really liking that, they're still going to remember who showed them. And then if they have a friend that's like, oh, I really like, you know, horror comics, but I'm not a huge fan of blank, right? They're like, oh, I actually met this guy over here, even if they're not following you because you put them on to the thing that they like. And being a, you know, like a tastemaker, somebody who knows all of these different realms that someone could go into, just being that person is powerful enough to draw people to you, and then they'll filter themselves out naturally. Like they might come to you and go, hey, do you know blank? And eventually that blank is your thing.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a huge deal.
We've been at a show before where we've had a friend, a fellow creator who was several like rows away from us, literally walked some people over that were dressed in steampunk to our booth because he saw that they were dressed in steampunk and was like, I know who you guys need to see, and like totally brought them, like walked with them to our booth. So it's like, you know, you don't have to do, nobody has to do that. You know, you have to take the time out to do that. So it's awesome when those types of things happen.
Shout out to Chuck Pineau. That's who it was. I mean, he definitely like, he's like, hey guys, these guys are over at my booth. And those people ended up buying a lot from us. I mean, we've seen their return customers, return backers. We saw them at other shows. We saw them at a show that was like 2 hours away from that show at one point, and they were like, hey, what's going on, buddy? You know, and if it wasn't for Chuck walking them over to us, we never met them.
Yeah, because this was at MegaCon, I think. And so MegaCon is enormous, and you can walk all the aisles of MegaCon and miss a million things because there's just so many people and so many things. So that's not, it wasn't like a little show that they would have eventually passed us by. They could have gone there and never seen us and never even known.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like Chuck right now is getting a major shout out just because he brought someone over to you. And like, if someone comes to you and you know 3 people who make, you know, like horror comics, the one who is helping you out the most is going to be the first one that comes to mind without even having to think about it because you're at the top of their mind. So that's the other reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just, you know, it's a cycle thing, you know, and I think some people underutilize that.
Yeah, when we first, when I started like posting every day on social media, because like it took Dylan a little while for him to like get that like in my brain, like you gotta do this. I started sharing everybody's like work, in any indie person, on our like stories, and then they started like messaging back like, oh, like nobody does this. I was like, what? I was like, yeah, it doesn't happen. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna keep doing it. So
yeah, we've appreciated everything that you have. You know, you've been really great at sharing our stuff and getting the word out, and you never know too. We'll have somebody share our stuff and then we'll get a backer, you know, a few minutes later. Who knows? That could have been you, you know, that could have been because you shared it and somebody on your friends list saw it that wasn't on ours. You just never know what's going to come from it.
Yeah.
There's an old adage in the music world that I love to share, and that adage is people want to hear about a band, not from a band. And it makes a lot more of an impression to somebody if if we were to be like, oh man, you know, Seer Chronicles is awesome, then for you guys to be like, dude, our comic is the best comic ever, because everybody can say that what they do they think is awesome. But if somebody with no skin in the game will give you a shout out, you know, it's not going to financially affect me in any way if somebody buys your comic. So, but if I'm shouting it out because I like it, then they're going to listen to it a little bit more, because they know that there's actually a little more of a truth to it. It's not something with a biased viewpoint. So when you've been sharing the stuff, it definitely does not go unnoticed that you've been sharing. It's very, very known how much stuff you've been sharing recently.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
I'll be excited about something you're not involved in. What is it?
Yeah. Some of the people, like, guy, I kind of like idolize, and he's like just one of us. He's I think his name's Joe from Afterlight Comics. It's horror stuff.
Oh yeah, I know,
And he's the reason I like found out horror comics existed.
Yeah.
I first got into this, and I was like, "What is that?" And like Wendigo Wood was like, "Oh, that's awesome."
Yeah, I do. I know him through Twitter. I've seen his stuff through Twitter.
Yeah, I just kept sharing his stuff on like Instagram, because that's like our main platform. Because I don't know, I just like being on there more. Facebook, I'm on there more, and I think that's why we got so many backers on our Kickstarter this year. Is I was just more on Facebook than the previous years, and then he backed our campaign, and I was like, you don't understand how awesome that is. He did it last year, but like, that's, and he's like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, yeah, you want to be on like our podcast at some point? He's like, oh yeah. I was like, oh.
It is crazy. Almost, I think it's, there it is. 29 of our pledges came from Facebook, and more than a quarter of our funding is from Facebook right now.
Yeah.
If you guys, if you're hearing this and you hear any kind of like thunder rumbling through my microphone, that's because I'm in Florida, and it was like over 100-degree heat index before noon today. And so if you're in Florida and that's the case, it is probably going to rain like you've never heard before. So there's definitely some thunder outside that is rumbling like mad. So.
Oh yeah, I lived in Florida for 3 months and hated it, and it wasn't because of the storm. It was
where are you at?
Venice.
Okay. Venice, the place that is well known for the shark tooth beaches.
Yep. Yeah. I'm like, the friend that I went down there with, he's like, oh, you want to go to the beach? And I'm like, okay. And then I'm walking on it, and there's just teeth everywhere. And I'm like, ow. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to the beach. And I like the beach. Yeah, I just didn't like it because, I moved back because I got the opportunity because my stepdad passed away like years ago. And that's when I was there. And then I was only there April to July. And then I was like, oh, well, this is kind of perfect timing in like a shitty way. Like, oh, well, I have to go to his funeral. And then like the guy's house that I was like staying in was my friend's now father-in-law. And I was sleeping in a dining room. That's where I was sleeping.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and I had to share the house. I had to share a bathroom with like 8 other people. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I like privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had no privacy because like the dining room was right next to the kitchen. So I had no privacy or anything. And I was trying to write my comic when I was there. And then my friend was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm listening to music and writing. I'm like, what? And he's like, well, we're in the living room. I'm like, I can see that. I don't care. You're watching Friends. I've seen that before. Like, I'm doing this.
Making something new.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What was I going to say? Oh, so what do you do when you're like not making comics?
Well, I right now in a pandemic, I'm sitting here being, I would say bored off my butt, but not really, because I got to spend pretty much every day, you know, sitting on video chat with Steph, working and writing, and that's great. I mean, why would I want to do anything else? But if it's a situation where like we're not in a pandemic, I've been a USSF soccer official for 20 years. I've got almost 5,000 games under my belt. I've repped everything up to competitive adult. When I say competitive adult, The highest is UPSL, which is like a semi-pro league, but never like the MLS or anything like that. Anything from that down to, you know, little youth rec soccer games. But that's a big part of what my income is when we're not in pandemic mode. You know, like I said, with the pandemic and all the way it's been going, it's, you know, Steph and I've just been, you know, writing like crazy. We always say, and she always says, is because when I say it, is that it's like we are two people that work in the same office sitting in cubicles next to each other. We'll just have the video chat on and we'll be working through stuff and talking through stuff. This pandemic gave us the ability to be in the Housebound anthology. We were able to put a story in there that was, we never would have written, never would have had any thought to write it if we didn't have the time and the impetus to write it. It was created, as you would expect, by a bunch of creators that were stuck indoors during the lockdowns and whatnot. And they were like, let's do this anthology, and all the money from it was going to go to was going to be donated to relief efforts and, you know, PPE and things like that. And they said, hey, we want it to be about what is happening to you guys during the pandemic. Like, what are you doing right now? And they said, if you want, you can use some of your own, you know, your own IP, your own characters, that just has to fit the theme.
Yeah.
So what Steph and I did was, we were working on Tales from Nocturnia, working on issue 3 of 3 in the trade, and we made a 4-page story called Be Careful What You Wish For, and it's about the kingdoms in Tales from Nocturnia. You've got Nocturnia, and then you've got their arch rivals in Sinisteria. We put them both in a plague situation where everybody had to be locked down in the castle. You have these demons that are stuck in a dungeon, and everybody is just pining to get back out into the world and get back out into their normal daily life. And you've got these monsters that are like, when am I ever going to be able to go and sever a withering head? And this sucks. And the whole story was about, you know, oh, I can't wait to get back out and do the things we normally do. That's actually going to become part of the trade paperback, and it's going to be a prequel that we designed to lead into everything that happens in the issues. So
awesome.
It gave us the ability to be in this anthology, but it also gave us another piece of add-on material that really helps to spell out what happens in Tales from Nocturnia, because like we said, it's a 130-page issue, or going to be more than that. We have the 3 issues that we did for the story. The first issue was normal length. 2 and 3 are both double issues. It also spins off of Heirs of Isildur, and there's a small section that flashes back in Heirs of Isildur to some stuff that happens in Nocturnia. So we kind of repositioned that just a little bit. And so the trade paperback will have this piece from Housebound, then it'll have the issue 0 piece from Heirs of Isildur, and then go into the 3-issue series. So you're going to get a little bit more flavor as to what was going on in these kingdoms before everything completely fell to crap at the very beginning of issue 1 of Tales from Nocturnia.
That's very cool.
Awesome.
I think the question was what we do. I wasn't why like, but I think the question was what do we do?
Sorry.
What do we do when we're not writing?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm a runner. That takes up, you know, I would say a lot of my time, but it's a huge part of my life. I've ran 2 marathons, 16 or 17 half marathons, a bunch of 5 and 10Ks. And so I've got goals. Now there's no races to do because races have all been canceled as well. So there's been a lot of virtual challenges, virtual, you know, goals to do so that I can keep up with it and feel like I'm working towards something. So it's not as depressing as if you know, I don't have any races to go to. So.
Man, on that note, Steph, you know, I run as a referee, but I'm not anybody that goes and runs for fun. I actually can't stand running for fun. To me, those words don't go together. And earlier this year, when couldn't referee, so it's like, hey, I'm going to do this this virtual challenge, and the shirt looks really cool, and you know, I want to do it. I want to give you the shirt, and I'm like, man.
First of all, wait a minute. I have to correct him every time he says this.
It was said very nicely. It was said very nicely. It was a nice gesture, but I'm like, I'm not going to go wear a shirt.
He's super into aliens, and it was an alien shirt, so I thought of him, but it was not as insulting as it sounds when he tells it sometimes.
It was a nice gesture, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, I'm not going to wear a shirt that says I completed X if I didn't complete it. So I'm like, well, I guess this means I'm just going to have to run it with you. She wasn't asking me to do it, But I'm like, I guess I'm gonna have to run this thing now. How long is it? Oh, 97.7 miles. But in the span of 1 month, ended up finishing this thing. So, you know, I'm like, I can't believe that Steph gets out here and does this just like everyday normal stuff. Hey, I completed 5 miles, 6 miles, 10 miles. I mean, I commend her for being able to do that. My body was absolutely hating the crap out of me at the end of those 97.7 miles, but you know, yep, it is what it is.
That's about 97 more miles than I'd like to go.
Yeah. Yeah. The most I've done as like working out or running anything was just this weekend camping. There's this like giant hill that we had to go down to go to the pond where we were like going to fish. And the going down is fine because, you know, gravity and me being fat, but like going up is like another story. It's
Uphill
just,
is tough.
yeah.
Uphill is always tough.
Yeah, the last marathon Steph did was up and down in hills, and I'm like, I can't even imagine doing 26.2 miles. I sure as heck can't imagine doing half of that uphill. Forget that.
They said it was net downhill, and in the first mile we went uphill. So I was not prepared for that mentally. I was like, wait a minute, what? This is mile 1, but you know, it was a nice view at least.
I drank less water and ate more fettuccine Alfredo than I've ever.
Oh, but you carb loaded though. That's carb loading. That'll help.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always hate the hills. I'm not a huge runner, but like the most I'll do are 5Ks, and there's a 5K I run every fall for ovarian cancer, and like every single time there's always like the last hill before the end, and like that always sucks. So I'm always like, oh Jesus, I'm gonna make this last hill, and then I can stop breathing from from dying. But yeah.
One of the things that my running friends and I say a lot is 5Ks can be, it's a different kind of difficult, because when you're doing a marathon or a half marathon, you've sort of got this mindset that, okay, I'm going to be doing this thing for a while that's going to be really uncomfortable, and I have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is the saying that we have that actually can go into creating and promoting and all that. But with the 5K, you know, it's a shorter distance, and so you have the tendency to go all out and push yourself a little bit more, because, you know, most people say, well, it's a 5K, it's 3.1 miles, so I'm going to try, you know, try my hardest, and you can sometimes burn yourself out by mile 1, and then you've got, you know, 2 more miles to go. So 5Ks can be difficult little races. I think people underestimate them sometimes.
Yeah, I've never ran a 5K. So.
I've only ever run one officially. You know, there's been times we've just done it in the neighborhood to be like, let's see how much time what our time could be on there. But I've only actually run one officially, because it's not my thing, just because I'm used to going out there, and when soccer's in full force, I may do 10 games, 12 games in a weekend. There could be a weekend where I do 30 miles on the soccer field. I'm like, yep, I don't need to do any more of this. You know, I need to go recover so I can do this again next weekend and make some more money.
Yeah. Yeah, to jump off track a little, it's a little depressing, but I found out that Vincent Keith Morris Jr. passed away last week, like earlier last week. Yeah, I guess his birthday was like the 8th.
Oh,
Yeah, his birthday was yesterday.
So tough getting that. I saw the notification on my phone on Facebook that it was his birthday, and it just, you know, Matt and I, everybody that's in the indie comic community, I think, knew who Vincent was if they frequented any type of Facebook group. And I had the opportunity to have a couple conversations with Vincent over the years. I think a lot of people did. He was not afraid to put himself out there. He was not afraid to talk to people, and his enthusiasm. I mean, Matt and I both said it, and I think you did too, that I'd be hard pressed to find somebody that didn't work as hard as that guy did. And, you know, say what you want about his work, about the comic itself, in the end doesn't matter, because he obviously left a huge impact on people. You know, you could be the best artist, you could be a big 2 level artist, but if you are just that, it can still be forgettable. And I think that Vincent really proved that drive and passion and enthusiasm and belief in yourself amidst the challenges that he had is what left his mark on the comic world.
Yeah. I definitely, one of the things that's interesting too is that, you know, I know that both Steph and I, our impression of who he was changed a lot even in the past year, because he got to a point where he was not only putting out a page a day, every day you knew at some point you were stopping what you're going to do to see what he did. There's not a lot of us out there that can say that people actually stopped what they were doing every single day to see your creation. Again, wasn't the best artist, wasn't the best writer, but that doesn't make a difference. He transcended that because of the fact that he had his limitations. I coach youth soccer, and I would rather have a team full of less talented individuals that gave me 100% every single time they got on the field than somebody that has got A+ talent that was cocky about it, that only gave me half of their effort. And, you know, that dude would put videos up. Hey, Mark Ruffalo, if you're watching my personal Facebook feed, I've got an idea. And you're like, you know, to him, to us, we're like, we know that if we were to put that video on our Facebook feed, he's never going to see that.
Yeah.
But he didn't know that. To him, he was reaching out and he was putting himself out there in a way that none of us probably ever would. And to me, that is the lesson to learn from him, is that, you know, you can't ever be afraid to put yourself out there. You never know what's going to come from it. He said right before he died, and it was really bizarre. He said probably about a month ago, he was talking about how much he loved his Kid Intense stuff. And he's like, I'm going to create Kid Intense until the day I die. And it was one of those really weird comments. You're like, you're going to be doing this till you're like 70? You know, I mean, how many more boffs and booms and bops can you do? You know, that's a long time to be doing that. And then he passes away within a few weeks, and you're like, dude, you know, he didn't lie to anybody. He said he's going to do it to the day he died, and he sure did. And now you go to some boards, comic creator opportunities, everybody and their brother is doing tributes to Kid Intense. And it's because Vincent was just one of those innocent, likable guys in that respect. And it's like, I think he's going to have more of an impact after his death than he did prior to that, which is just amazing.
Yeah, we chatted with him a few times about his comic too, and it's like, yeah, it might not have been the best, but I do remember telling Greg a couple times, I'm like, but damn, like he's got some energy behind that though. Like, like he's super excited. I'm like, if anyone else in the comic industry was even half excited about pushing their, you know, like being proud about their content, right, or their comics, yeah, like that would definitely help push a lot of great creators out there and, you know, get their name out there.
And I think too, I mean, other than a couple of times he put a couple of political posts up there, other than that, he just tried to stay away from that. Everything was about what he was doing. It was about, do you want to be a fan of what I'm doing? And that's what all of us should be doing. So many people get so tied up in all this other business and what everybody else is doing. Steph and I are all about, do you want to get on the train about what we're doing? Do you want to be a fan of our stuff? If so, there's room for you on our train. We don't care what your background is. We don't care what your beliefs are, as long as you're not doing something that intentionally is harming another person, not what somebody thinks you're doing, but as long as you're not literally out there abusing children or something like this or killing animals. I mean, as long as you're not doing something like that, there's room for you on our train. And as long as you want to do that, hey, let's go. Yeah. Let's keep on going. Don't expect us to be latching our train onto somebody else's viewpoint, onto somebody else's campaign. That's not who we are. And I wish more people would do that. Just be happy with who you are, happy with the content you're creating, and let all that other crap just kind of go away. It'd be a much happier society if people would do that.
Yeah, I actually like that Facebook post that you did. It was like sharing all the campaigns. I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. I'm gonna copy that. So
that was so fun. That was so fun because it was one of the times when what Matt mentioned earlier doesn't apply. It was so much fun to see that. You guys did, Travis did, and I think one other person may have. And it was so fun because we all share different campaigns. We all got inspired by each other. That's the kind of inspiration from somebody else's, you know, post or work that is always okay, because it was just really, really cool to see.
Yeah. I didn't have any of the Kickstarter links yet because I was at work and Travis was like, "You're not copying us because you're not doing it correctly." I was like, "Wait." Yeah, I was thinking like if there was a way to like make his like Kid Intense as like a book and like gets like an artist and everything, but I don't know like how that would fly.
Well, I know there's somebody out there that's doing he's doing a tribute thing where just a bunch of
Yeah.
artists are doing their own images of it. I think they're going to give some of the proceeds back to his family. I think David Jackson is the one who's putting that together, and because neither Steph or I are artists, not
Yeah,
really
I
something we could go and put ourselves into. But
I mean, honestly, what I can draw is makes, compared to what he was able to do, intense. It's like I have no qualms to say I have no artistic ability whatsoever.
Yeah, I could draw a cube.
I can't even do that.
Greg has to use the one that already has the lines, like the grid lines, though.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what is your ultimate goal on your Kickstarter? Where are you hoping to get to? I know what your ask is. I know I just flipped the script and I'm asking you guys the question, but like, what is your hope to be able to get out of the Kickstarter when you guys are all said and done at the end, other than just funding?
Like the amount that we want, or like
Sure, the amount, backers, whatever it may be. What are you hoping to see at the end, more than just what your ask is?
well, I would say at least 100, but Dylan says don't ask for small goals. Don't go for small goals. So 150, because the last Kickstarter we did, we got 118, and that was our first successful Kickstarter. And so maybe 120, just because it's 2 more than last time. And at least get funded. I would like the first stretch goal, but I don't want to announce it. But like a small number of people know what the first stretch goal is.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat when it comes to not announcing what a stretch goal is. Like we will, once we reach it, we'll tell you what it is, and then whatever normally the thing is that, hey, here's the next thing. If we get here, we'll tell you what that is. But when people have these big, large lists, we don't want to be like, hey, we're at 2,000 and our $10,000 stretch goal is this, because we've never been there before. So we're not going to set something out there. I mean, we know what's going to happen at 8,000. We know what our next thing may be if we were to reach a next stretch goal. But we're not going to go announcing anything past that point until we get there, just because we don't want to be internally. I don't want to be putting the cart before the horse and be like, we're going to get there. I mean, who knows? We might not get another dollar on our campaign. We might cross 10,000. You never know what's going to happen. So we just know we're going to be grinding it out. We're literally going to be, when the red numbers come on there and it starts counting down the seconds left in your campaign, we are still going to be out there firing on cylinders, trying to get those last minute backers. It's what you have to do.
Yeah. When we ran our first successful Kickstarter, that was definitely one of the things. Like, we were definitely way more focused on just getting the initial goal, and like after we started surpassing that, we had to start thinking like, what would we do if we had more funding?
Yeah.
It's like that's much better than like, plan. Like, you should have, like, now that we know that that's a possibility, we have ideas of what we want to do. Like, if we reach like ridiculously high numbers. But it's definitely something we're much more focused on, trying to make sure that the people that back us, that get, like, we want people to really care about getting us to at least our initial goal, because like obviously that's the point of the Kickstarter, is the release of our second comic and a complete redoing of our first comic, which is like, I know I'm super excited about. So.
Yeah, one of the things we try to do too is that we want to make sure that we're not forgetting about those people that jumped in early. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I got to get more. I got to get more people, got to get more people, got to get more people. You're like, dude, I'm over here. I was backer number 3. What about me? So we've tried to make sure, hey, when we get to this level, we're going to give you, the house band anthology. The guys who created that gave us the ability to put that in there. We have a few of the holofoil trading cards. Anybody that was in by the time we got to our 4,500 to our initial ask is going to be in a drawing at the end of our campaign. I think we're going to have a half a dozen incentive drawings. And we've had some little flash ones where like anybody that backs on a certain day, if they're a new backer or if they're an existing backer that raises their pledge, they can raise their pledge by $1. We don't care. You'll get your name added onto another drawing at the end of the campaign. And the other day we were stuck. We were at one of those levels where you're just like, dude, there's nothing happening for hours and hours and hours. And we put one of those things up there to get to 7,000 to that one stretch goal, or 7,500. And we got like $200 in the span of probably 30 minutes. Because there's a lot of people that were just like $1 here, $1 there. Hey, I've been waiting to pick this thing up from you guys. Now I see you have this drawing. I'll go get that now. And we just try whatever we can try, dude, to try and, keep the numbers up, but also keep the original backers that backed 30 days ago engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that, so I do like marketing consulting for small businesses. And one of the things I always like reiterate is don't forget about your current, customers, because people keep giving away all these like, oh, first time customers, huge ass discount. And then the people that have been with you this whole time, you like stopped offering things to. And it's like, they've been with you for 20 years and you haven't given them a discount. That's why like all these, like the ISPs, the internet service providers, people bounce from one to the other because they just get forgotten about. They do these huge discounts to get you to sign that big contract. And then after that, they like forget that you're the reason that they're able to pay their employees and, build their, income.
Well, one of the things we've tried to make sure on this campaign too, that we have been really careful about is a lot of times people have flash sales during the campaign. Hey, we have this one thing over here that's in the campaign, and for this day only, we're going to sell it for less. Because if you're somebody that paid earlier on in the campaign and paid full price for it, you're like, dude, why am I getting penalized for this other person over here desperate to get? So we've tried to make sure that we've not been doing anything like that, because we don't want to go disenfranchise anybody that backed us early and got us to this point. So,
and honestly, that's why things like raffles are pretty good. Like if you like say like right now we're at 90 something backers. We could do it where like, oh, the first 100 backers will be entered into a raffle, and that way you because then you're pushing for those next few to like reach the number 100, but all the people who already donated aren't just left out. You know what I mean? Like you're including them in all of that. So that's definitely, there's definitely good things you can do to help push those donations down the line without actually forgetting your original backers.
I just noticed on your Kickstarter I didn't have like the entire saga thing, so I updated that a bit.
Oh hell yeah, man!
Oh, thank you.
And you got yourself one of the shirts too, man. That's great stuff. So you'll end up getting the so you'll end up getting the
you're $10 away.
Yeah, $10 away. So what you're gonna get in there, you'll get the full book. So you'll have the book, which will have, the book contains all the issues and all the, issue 1 is going to be relettered in the book. So you have the book that's got all that stuff in there. And I see you got one of the shirts, the Dragon's Lair shirts, which are going to be freaking badass. 3 of the trading cards that we have already said are going to be out there, which are the 2 Garbage Pail Kid homage cover foil covers. And then we have 1 for a brand new character that's going to be in the campaign. You'll get one of the wooden logo stickers, I believe, in there. And then I'll have to double check. I think the wooden logo sticker comes in there as well. And then, yeah, awesome, man. Let me see what else is there in there. Obviously, you'll get Housebound. So there's a lot of stuff that's not listed there that people have unlocked all these tiers. And because of the level that you're at, because you're now up to, you're at 45. So that means that when we get $10 more in, the thing that we announce at 8,000 will actually come your way as well. Because this is gonna be something that will only be, you have to, I think that Steph and I decided you have to be a backer at $20 or more before shipping to be able to get it. So since you are now, then you're gonna get that in there as well. So like I said, there is a lot of cool add-ons. It's not just throwaway crap, and it doesn't mean we're not hating on anybody else's jam or what they want to do. But to us, we don't want to just put stuff in there people are gonna look at and be like, let's throw it in the bin and never see it again. We want to put really cool collectible things in there, and that's what we're going to do. So yeah, man, $10 away at this point. So when people hear this or see this,
hopefully it'll be way over that.
They're going to be, what $10 are they talking about? So at the time of this recording,
time of the recording,
we're at $79.90. When we got to 8,000, then that's when this thing is we're talking about. Now, when this thing is recording, hopefully we're going to be like, when we get to $10,000, you guys, we'll have to see what happens, guys.
You never know.
Yeah.
And what's the name of your Kickstarter?
It is Tales from Nocturnia 1 through 3. If you look up the word Nocturnia, Nocturnia, you can get to it and you'll see the Kickstarter right there.
Yeah, very cool. I just want to make sure the name was shouted out because sometimes people have trouble finding it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have this written down as bullet point, but like, what Kickstarters are you like looking forward to the rest of the year? Do you know any that are already announced, like, or books like Belial?
Oh, Belial, of course, man. Anything
Of
Chuck
course.
puts out, we're going to be supporting.
Yeah.
Actually, really looking forward to The Wolf and I, which just launched like 3 hours ago. Krista Crawford, who we have a relationship with through some of the printing that she does out of her own company. She just released a Kickstarter called The Wolf and I. That definitely looking forward to that. Russel Nohelty is going to have Ichabod Jones, Monster Hunter's got a Kickstarter coming out in September. Jamie Primack is Binary Star. That's going to be, by the time this thing launches, this will either be the day of or the next day. I mean, there's been so many good Kickstarters recently, like ridiculous amounts. Love to
Like
give a shout
Ninja
out to.
Nuns and
Yeah, Ninja Nuns is out there.
Yeah,
That's
they're
great.
all,
Obviously, Voodoo Nations will have a couple days left when this thing drops. Exilium, which, like I said, we've had a long relationship with Ben Slayback, and we definitely think that that's going to be a worthwhile thing. Let me show you. I've actually got something from Ben right here, and like Steph said earlier, I'm an aliens person. Ben, who's in Australia, this is one of his stretch goals, is actually a USB drive with the digital version of his comic on there. That is,
Insane.
he got that printed for Exilium 1. That is what you're talking about right there. That's some serious business. So yeah, if you haven't checked out Exilium Part 2, Season 2, you want to go do that as well. Are there any other ones that you can think of off the top of your head, Steph, that are?
It's kind of difficult because there's so many that are going on right now, and I know for me, I have a hard time remembering those kinds of things. It's not any insult to anybody. It's just there's a million things, and my brain has a really hard time with that. So
yeah, like I said, I forget which other ones are coming out, coming up soon. But man, there's just been so many. There's been so many. I know, that's one that's coming out soon on August 18th. Luke Stone is doing Hybrid Son of God's trade paperback, and I think that's going to probably end up being a really cool trade paperback one as well.
yeah. When's the next like Broke Down come out? Probably not until next year.
yeah,
I don't.
think Travis. I think he said next year.
Yeah.
I think. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what he said.
I will say this. I will say this. Knowing Travis, whether the next Broke Down comes out next year or not, there's probably going to be 3 more Kickstarters before the end of the year that he's associated with, because Travis has got his hands in a lot of things. He just worked with Return to Sender as a project manager for David Sumney. He's got Cthulhu
of Oz or whatever.
That's right. That's going to be the next one I think he has coming out, which is Cthulhu Invades Oz.
Yeah.
That's going to be coming out as well. So yeah, that one obviously we're looking forward to, because that's going to be a fun anthology that he has got a ton. You look at the list of names that are involved in that thing, and I'm like, man, talk about having to organize creative teams from all over the place.
Yeah.
He has put a lot of time into that, and it's definitely coming out really well. So definitely looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah. We actually are putting out an anthology, but it's not mostly us. Like, it's under, like, it'll be on our platform, but it's there's a guy, Matthew Myers. He has a comic called Down by Contact, and it's like a zombie comic. I'm not really into zombies, but but it's good for being a zombie comic. I just not into it. And he's coming out with a Kickstarter this month, and I was like, you can't do it so close to your other one. You have to. And he's like, yeah, I know. The first one that's coming out this month at some point very soon, like this week, is Marbles the Cat, and it's like a robotic cat or like an alien cat fighting, like, it's got like laser eyes and stuff, and it's fighting like tiny robots.
Nice.
And,
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I love creativity with Kickstarters. I love it when people really put something different out there, something that you can tell they probably were having some kind of edible in California or something like that. They're like, no, it's time to write. And you're like, where in the world did that ridiculous idea come from? And it's endearing, because you're like, man, these guys really stepped up the game. They didn't just go and cut by numbers and put something out there. So like Warcorns, when Warcorns came out, that thing was ridiculous, man. That was a fun campaign. They had a lot of cool merch in that one. I really liked Warcorns.
And then I was like, oh, since you got Marbles the cat, I'll put the cat in our video game. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's like an easy thing because there's a firefighter character that you can be. That's part of the story. And one of the missions is you have to rescue that cat from a tree.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's a really clever way of fitting it in. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of stuff is going on? Why don't you talk a little bit about your video game?
Oh, okay.
Why don't you sell your video
It's about
game?
you guys.
Sell us on your video game.
I could talk like for 3 hours about that, but
If you had a 5-minute pitch about your video game, what would you say?
that's Dylan. Dylan, go away. Yeah.
Honestly, the cool reason that we even have a video game in development is the fact that initially when we were building our comic, our goal was to try to keep things as congruent as possible and avoid the Marvel, excuses by just like, oh, there's multiverses, so now we can break all reality and we don't have to follow any rules. We wanted to like at least, Game of Thrones style, like, people die, we can kill them off and they're gone. Like we don't have to worry about them anymore. And one of the things that we wanted to do to keep that congruency is to have it so like, say, one of our protagonists is chasing a villain down a street and they take a left on Elm Street. Like what buildings are on that street every single time? And what if there's new developments in our city? So we decided that we were going to take where Greg grew up in Schenectady, New York, and take that map and turn it into a city. So we used the same exact streets, and we're just like swapping out like houses for like skyscrapers, for example, and swapping out businesses with our like corporations. And so essentially that's kind of how it started. And it was literally like Google Maps and me like drawing little squares, and it was ridiculous. And then eventually I was like, man, this would be a lot easier if we could do this like in a semi 3D fashion, so we could actually like get like skyline views. And Greg goes, oh, I know a guy who can, who can do that. So, he starts building that stuff, and eventually he goes, oh yeah, he's doing it in like Unity, like it's like the game development platform. And like it just slowly like transitioned over to like, why don't we just like, since we're building a 3D world into a video game development system, like why don't we just make a video game? And like it just slowly tangented out like that. And then we were trying to figure out, okay, like what are we going to do? Just follow the comics? And there will be certain things in there that do, but our goal now is to actually have this be the pages between the comics. So now there's all this stuff that's happening on in our actual city. Like, maybe there's a robbery and a bunch of the mafia that's part of one of these gangs in our comics is actually causing mayhem over here. And later down the line, that stuff will interfere with another comic, but you'll only really know about it because it's been in like the newspaper in our world. And if you play the game, you'll actually be able to be the cops like chasing them down, or like the firefighters saving
cool.
families and stuff like that. So that's kind of how that developed, and it's definitely just taken a life of its own, or taken on a life of its own now.
I can definitely respect that, because that's kind of some of the same stuff that we've done. Like, for instance, we've got the Heirs of Isildur CD, and we've also got a few music videos. So like in Heirs of Isildur, there's spots that'll say, you want to know more about this character, go listen to this song or go watch this music video. And it was additional origin stories for a lot of the characters. So you could read the book and not need the CD. You could listen to the CD and not need the book. But if you put the two together, there was definitely a lot of additional things you could learn. And that's like with Heirs of Isildur and Tales from Nocturnia. Tales from Nocturnia is a sister story to Heirs. You don't need one to enjoy the other, but there is one crossover character, and each story gives you a little bit more knowledge about that character that you would not have had if you didn't have the other one. So like, for instance, the character that crosses over is the king in the Kingdom of Nocturnia. He rides his horse out into the wilderness, and he gets pulled in through a portal into our steampunk time travel series. If you are a reader of Heirs of Isildur, you might get a little bit better understanding of who this character is if you've read Tales from Nocturnia. If you're a reader of Tales from Nocturnia, you will understand, hey, this guy got pulled in through a portal, and that's why he disappeared. We started to write Tales from Nocturnia so that you could be from the perspective of everyone else that's left in this kingdom. All they see is our king got on his horse, he rode out into the wilderness, and he's disappeared. They don't know why he disappeared. In their knowledge, they don't even know what a portal is. So to them, they're like, our king disappeared. What are the potential reasons why this could be? Did he get eaten by animals in the forest? He must have been kidnapped by the people in Sinisteria. So that's the best knowledge they have, is that our enemies must have kidnapped our king. As a reader who knows or Heirs of Isildur, you're like, oh no, you guys, don't do that. That's not what happened to the king. But they don't know that, so you can't expect them to do anything different. So we try to make sure the same thing. We have these, where the story extends out past the pages of the story that you currently have in front of you. So I respect that. I think it's a really cool idea.
Well, one of the things too is that like I'm a huge fan of Easter eggs. I love like having an inside into something I enjoy. And so like some of the stuff that we're going to be doing is in the video game, there'll be little things like maybe in somebody's bedroom, there's going to be a poster on the wall of a comic book on our platform, like not even directly related to us. We're just like there's going to be the Marvel the Cats in a tree. And the other cool thing that we're doing as well is that in our newest comics and every comic after the first comic, there's going to be 2 pages in the comic that is a newspaper. And I don't even know if we've actually announced this yet, so this will probably be the first time. Like,
yeah,
we're going to have two front and back pages, or at least 1 page or 2 sheets, right, of newspaper articles that discuss what's been happening in the city. And if you play the game, you'll maybe know why it happened, right? Like, oh no, a building mysteriously burned down, and it turns out if you play as the criminal character, you did it to get, to steal something and not have it be known, right? So it could be something like that where we're going to tie it in so well, like here's what's been going on in Seer City. And so it might talk about things that are happening that aren't directly part of the story, but it's as if, this comic book is just a moment in time, but this newspaper is like what's happening while you're waiting for it.
Yeah.
I definitely hope you guys are able to do all the things that you want to do, because definitely is the kind of thing that we are personally into, that I'm personally into. Our big thing is always, we don't want the story to end when you're done reading it and you put it in your bin or put it on the shelf. We want you to always have the ability to be able to experience it more when we get to hopefully what the next Kickstarter is going to be for us, which is going to be the next album. For the first album, like we just said, we're attached to Heirs of Isildur. The next album is going to be a little bit different because we didn't want to just go and do the same thing over and over again. If you were to go onto the Tales from Nocturnia Kickstarter, this one or either of the first 2, and look at the campaign video, or if you look at the video that we have up there for the Dragon Lord mask, all the music in those is played sitting right here in the same chair on the 8-string guitar that's back here, and they're all little snippets, little sneak peek clips of music that's going to be a full song on the next album. That's so awesome. We found ways to integrate that and show, hey, look, we have a little more going on than just the comics. That doesn't mean that we don't give it all when it comes to the writing that we do. We just always want to be creating more and more and more and more, so that way people can, as we say, create characters that they can relate to and universes they want to escape into, which I think you guys understand, that whole universe they can escape into thing.
Yeah, well, because like the fun thing is, even outside the video game, like just in the comic book itself, there's at least, I'll say there's probably at least 3 things in there that you like once the 3rd and 4th comic come out eventually, like you'll notice, like I keep seeing this thing randomly, like I don't know what it is, but I know I've seen it before. Nobody's talking about it, but I've seen it now a few times. And we wanted to, like, the real fans, like the people who've read every comic or like they played the video game, they're like, I keep seeing this thing that nobody, like, what is it? And later down the line, like on the 10th, 20th comic, that's when it's going to be like, oh my God, that thing that they've been showing forever.
Yeah.
We've done that.
Yeah.
We've totally done that. We've done that with something.
I love that stuff.
Without giving away what it is, there's something in Tales from Nocturnia 1 that when you get to the end of it, you go, oh crap, and then you look back at the page, you're like, dude, how did that thing slide under my vision?
It was there the whole time in all kinds of funny ways.
Yeah.
Did that in Heirs of Isildur, the steampunk story. There was something that was actually on the cover of one of the issues that was very blatantly obvious on the cover, but it was one of those things that was a secondary detail that when you got to the end of issue 4 and then a reveal in issue 5, you're like, hold on, what the crap? And then you go back and you almost had to reread from the beginning and go, okay, this whole story just took a completely different turn. Now that I have this information, this has completely changed what I've read for the first few issues. And whenever we can put those little Easter eggs in there, we always try to do it as well. We, you know, have a big mantra about writing things backwards, meaning find your climax points and make sure you know where you be. Yep. And when we were putting Tales from Nocturnia together, putting the third issue together, we knew a lot of these big major climax points that we had in there, and having to build backwards so that we can make sure we confidently built up to that point it was a fun process, but it was also very difficult because the climax points in Nocturnia 3 are very big in a sense. And if we didn't write it exactly right, people would be like, dude, there's just no way.
Yeah.
But we made sure that we really deliberately put all the effort in to make sure when those big climax points happen that they're going to be believable even in this fantasy realm. They're going to meet the rules of the universe. They're going to be believable, but at the same time, you're going to go, dude, what were these people on when they read that? And the answer to that is coffee.
Yeah. Well, like you were just saying so the way that we now write all of our comics is Greg essentially comes up with the whole plot, but very often there's like spots where it's like, why are they all at the same spot at the same time? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I know it's for the sake of the story, but then I'm the editor and I go through and I make it make a lot of friggin' sense. So you're like, oh my God, like one of the things that we're doing with the first comic, the rewrite of that, is we're making it so that every character that something like happens to, you actually care about. Like that's a big issue, is that a lot of the stuff was like too quick. And so now we're like really putting in like these small details. And in a previous podcast, I talked about the real life Aladdin movie. And there was one particular scene that I overemphasized how bad it was done in the real movie, because it was done very specifically in the cartoon. And it's the scene where Aladdin gets yelled at by that rich guy about to go in the palace before Aladdin really starts his journey. And it's basically like, you were born a street rat and you'll die a street rat. That scene, there's so many things they do symbolically in there, like even up until the very last moment when it was daytime for most of it, and right as like the doors close to like, you'll never be in here, it switches to night and a whole different mood change. Like all these little details, right? Like the guy riding the horse doesn't look at him. Like all of these things that are super important, but you don't realize it unless they get taken out of it, right? It's one of those things that, it's kind of like lettering, honestly. It's one of those things that if it's done really well, you shouldn't notice it. And if it's
exactly.
But when it's done poorly, you're like, this looks like crap.
Oh, exactly. And that's always what I've said about lettering too. Lettering should add emphasis, and there's cool things you can do with lettering if it lends to the story. But for the most part, you don't want that to be the first thing you notice when you turn a comic page. Because normally, if you're noticing it, unless it's very stylistically done, which is really cool too, most of the time, if you're noticing right off the bat, it's because it's bad. So that's, yeah.
Even when it's good, it feels like it's more part of the artwork, not like it's lettering. And that's the reason why, like, you should never really notice it. And if it's done really well, it's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense that should look exactly like that. That's how my head pictured it, and that's what it is. But it's definitely, like you were saying, like the writing backwards to forward, like knowing where you want to go, getting all that stuff in line, and then making sure that everything lines up just right. Like it's definitely like we like even the second comic, like the ending to it, like we totally changed when we rewrote it, because it now it's like one of the things that we did while we're rewriting it was making sure that the bottom right of every page, unless it's a splash page, makes you want to turn the page.
Yep.
Like you're like, oh my God, what's about to happen? Or like, it's like, oh no, I can't believe that happened. What's next? Like,
we always try to make sure that we've got a page turn. One of the first things I learned about writing comics is that you should have many cliffhangers on every other page so that the reader wants to, because comics are so quick hitting. It's not like a prose book that's, it takes a lot. You've got to put a lot more into reading that versus a comic where everything is happening much quicker. And so you need that little mini cliffhanger to get the reader to want to turn the page.
Yeah, I already know, like, not the ending of the video game, because the video game is like continuing forever until like all of our comics are probably done.
Forever.
Forever.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, I already know like this one scene that's gonna happen in the end of the first story of the trilogy, because the Seer Chronicles is a graphic novel trilogy.
Okay.
And yeah, it was originally 1,200 something pages that I wrote.
Like text, not with not like broken down into
Yeah,
panels.
it's not even broken down. Yeah.
1,200 pages. Wow, man. Even when I wrote the 11 issues of Heirs of Isildur, when it was all just text, it wasn't anywhere near 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
Actually, I was gonna say, and honestly, now since I've been like editing through it, like this, like if it was written back into text, this thing would probably be like 3,000 pages long. Like we took the first issue, and I think the first page.
It's now 4 pages or
Just the first page is now 4 pages with way more in-depth like storyline behind it. Like, you know, like for anyone who's read our first comic, the fighter character, like suddenly like you actually give a crap about him, and like there's way more intense scenes with him before you know, something bad happens, right? And it's very cool. Like, but the whole thing about like getting to the end and like seeing like, oh my God, like that was what I was thinking. I was thinking of the Book of Eli, and I don't want to like spoil it for who hasn't seen it, but
I love that movie.
when you finish that movie and you're like, holy crap, that makes sense. Oh my, like, but you don't know it the whole time. Like I love that. Like that stuff is just the best.
That's one of my biggest inspirations for doing those types of things, for you know, surprise endings or this lead up to something that you just had no idea, because that was one. Normally I can kind of tell with the movie, I can see it coming or know what the major thing is, but that was one where I just did not figure it out at all, and it was such an awesome surprise.
Yeah, any like movie or story that like has something where basically you can't even watch it again. Like, you can enjoy it, but like you cannot watch it again and see the same movie because of how like altered your reality is on that. Like, I love that stuff, because
that's so awesome.
Then you become an insider once you've seen it, as opposed to like someone who can spoil a movie. It's more like, you know, something no one else does about it that completely changes the story, and I love that.
Oh yeah, that's like when we did on Tales from Nocturnia 2. We already knew where it was going in Nocturnia 3, and you know, we couldn't tell people. They were thinking it was going to go one way, and we couldn't tell them anything different. Just like with Nocturnia 3, there was somebody like, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, and I can't wait to see this, and we're all over here going, you know, you might be disappointed, you might be super stoked that it may not go the way you think it's going to go. So
yeah, I still can't wait for the ending of the first story, because it only changed a little from when I told Dylan, and he's like, oh, it should be like this, and he choreographed like what's going to happen. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's probably gonna be like 40 comics in now that we've extended so much of the story. Like even our second issue, the one that we're releasing now, I know Greg's just as excited, because it's totally changed from what the original plan was, because now we're focusing on somebody who is going to be like more of a quick character, and I'm like, now it's one of our favorite characters. Like, it's such a cool idea to dive deeper into like the psyche of these characters that weren't even supposed to be like that relevant.
Yeah, and because of the whole graphic novel that I wrote, there's certain plot points that didn't fit after editing it into a comic script. So those are now solo series. So that's why there's like Ink and other ones that I don't want to name yet. And there's a character in the Seer Chronicles that's in the beginning, but he's going to have a solo series later on that is not even superhero related. It's like horror related. So I can't wait for that.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this and coming on, and
thanks for having us.
absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing about your video game and all that. And like I said, definitely would hope that people come out and check out the Tales from Nocturnia Kickstarter. So when this thing drops, there'll be 4 or 5 days left. The easiest way to say it is going to end on Sunday, August 16th. We're hoping to end strong. This has been a campaign that has gone way above and done way more than either Steph or I. Even we had our, you know, what do we hope happens? What are our cheerleader predictions for what's going to happen? It's already exceeded even those cheerleader predictions. So, you know, we are super stoked about where it is, and we just want to be able to take the campaign as far as it can go. If you're someone that has not read Tales from Nocturnia, the most important thing is, while we say things like we want to get to certain levels, we most importantly want to get it into your hands, because we've had a ton of fun with the story. We've had a ton of fun with everything that goes along with it, and we feel like it's going to be money well spent and time well spent on your side to invest in the product that we're creating. We definitely take your support and your backing very seriously, and we do not ever want you to feel like that when you get it, you're like, dude, this is what I just spent all this time and money and effort in. That's just, no. We take it very seriously, and we really think this is going to be a great story, a great arc, and a great jumping off point for all the other things that Steph and I have in mind.
Yeah, and again, so it's Tales from Nocturnia number 1 through 3, plus the complete Legendary Saga book for when people try to look that up in Kickstarter. And then if you could push one of your platforms like Facebook, Instagram, like what's the one you're really trying to get people to follow you on?
Honestly, I think the thing we want people to follow us on the most is just any of the Insymmetry Creations page. Insymmetry Creations is the umbrella company, the LLC that Steph and I have, so that way any of the things that we do, whether it be Tales from Nocturnia or Heirs of Isildur, any of our personal appearances or online appearances, we try to keep the InSym, whether it's insymmetrycreations.com or Facebook/InSym, or Twitter, which is InSym Creations. You can get to all the other things from there, but as long as they know that they can go to the Insymmetry Creations pages wherever, then they'll be able to get to all the other titles.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I'll stop recording in like 5 seconds and then say bye the right way.
Thanks,
good.
guys.
See you
Thanks for
guys.
having us.